Hello, everyone. This is Snack from Crow's Nest, and today I'm answering a question that I think a lot of people who are interested in Edison format ask people, and that is, how much do decks cost? What is the cheapest deck? How much would it cost to play this deck that I played back in the day, like Black Wings, for instance, or Gladiator Beast? Is that deck expensive? All that. Anyways, today I'm answering that question, and so I guess I'll just get right into it. The way that I did this was I just downloaded a bunch of the top decks that have done well, and the first thing I did was I excluded the side deck because the side deck is often tuned for that specific event. The player is trying to get a leg up on, like, oh, I think frogs are popular in this meta, so I'm going to have anti-frog cards in my side, or stuff like that. And also it's a lot of like personal choice, like I prefer to have Compulse in my side, or I prefer to have Starlight Road in my side, this kind of a thing. Whereas the main deck and the extra deck are more like necessities. So I chose to only price the main and extras for all of these decks, so that you have an idea of how much like it really costs to get the bare bones of the deck to make the deck function. And then you can choose to fill the side with maybe some cards you have in your bulk, or the cheapest side deck cards that answer the things that are happening at your locals, that kind of a thing. So I downloaded them and I put them into the YGO Pro deck builder, and it gives us these outputs of how much they cost on these different websites. That's probably without shipping. So if you are looking to get it shipped to you, these prices are going to vary. And I went off of the TCG player because I'm in the United States, and that's the website that I use to get most of my stuff, for both the main and extra. So this is just an example of how I did it. And I might come back to this image in the future, but let's just get on with it. So I took 3 samplings, 3 different versions of a deck, like so 3 different Blackwing decks, 3 different Frog decks, and I averaged them all out. And these are the prices that I got. So the cheapest deck, if that's all you're here for, the cheapest deck on average is Machina at $53.69. And the most expensive average deck is Heroes with $91.64. So even the most expensive deck is comfortably under $100, which is pretty nice. It's one of the selling points about the format, I think. And you can get into the deck with some really good decks, Quick Draw, Lightsworn, Machina, all under $60 on average. So some of the top decks, like Blackwing, those are a little bit more expensive. Frogs, all 3 of these decks are pretty good in the meta. But that's not to say that a deck like Fairy, which won Ribbit Rulers, is sort of in the middle of the pack. Dragon Turbo is very strong. Zombies is very, very strong. Vayu actually got a lot cheaper because they just reprinted Vayu, the Emblem of Honor. And that card used to be $10. Now it's significantly less. Zombies got a lot cheaper because I think both Revived King Hades and Doom Kaiser Dragon both used to be very expensive. And then with Battles of Legend Crystal Revenge, they reprinted those. They might have been Magnificent Mavens, but it was a recent release where those got reprinted, and they're much, much cheaper now. So that significantly reduced the cost of the extra deck for Zombies. The Machina deck actually used to be more expensive too, because when you're playing a machine deck, you probably need multiple copies of Chimera Tech Fortress Dragon. That card also used to be expensive until earlier this year when they reprinted it. So even though it's an old format, these prices can change depending on if they're reprinting cards and stuff like that. Fairy was more expensive until recently because Herald of Orange Light was being played in current at 3. And now it's like, I think it got reprinted in an OTS pack, and it's kind of fallen out of the meta because they limited it on the latest ban list. So Fairy got cheaper. These are just things you have to keep in mind. Frogs got cheaper because Swap Frog fell out of the meta, all that kind of stuff. So this is just kind of a basic idea. I hope you can read all this. Machina, Lightsworn, Quick Draw, Zombie, Dragon, Fairy, Gladiator Beast, X-Saber, Vayu Turbo, Blackwing, Frogs, and Heroes. Those were the 12 decks that I chose to sample. I think that's a good variety of decks. And I tried to make sure that the 3 different decks that I sampled for each one were built very differently so you could get a good range. Here's another graph where instead of averaging them, I just left the 3 different decks. And here I am sorting them by the cheapest one that I sampled. So as you can see now, dragons are actually at the bottom. They're the cheapest deck at just $48.71. And that's probably due to one card. As you can see, there's the expensive dragon deck is the second most expensive deck, period. And I think that's because of Totem Dragon, which is a $17 card right now, last I checked. And that's just because it hasn't been reprinted. If they ever reprint Totem Dragon, then that version of the deck will get a lot cheaper. Frogs, these 2 you can see are much more expensive than this one, which is only $71. These 2 were playing hero cards, and the hero extra deck is kind of expensive, which is, I think, why heroes are the most expensive deck on average. Absolute Zero, I think, is about like $6 a piece, and you normally want to play 3. And Gaia, I think, is also like $6. So that's like 4 fusion monsters that you have to spend a bunch of money on. Plus, if they're playing Diva, you kind of want to be playing Android, and Android, Magical Android is also like a $6 card. These are some cards that could use some reprints and make Edison cheaper. So if any of that happens, these decks are going to get cheaper. Also, Frogs have Substitute, which used to be, I think, a $10 card, but it could easily get reprinted since it recently got unbanned. The thing that's keeping Vayu and Blackwings at the top of this list is that Armor Master is a very expensive card. It used to be mainly Vayu was a lot more expensive than Blackwing, but 2 things happened. First of all, Blackwing started playing 3 Vayu sometimes in some of their builds, but mainly it's just that you have to play multiple copies of Armor Master, which is an expensive card. Any other interesting things to point out? X-Sabers, Hyundai, I think is like a $13 card, and some X-Saber builds are playing more than 1 Hyundai. So if that card ever gets reprinted, X-Saber should become one of the cheaper decks, I would think, in the entire format. For Gladiator Beasts, you notice that one of these is much lower than the other 2. This cheaper list is playing no Test Tigers. Test Tiger, I think, is it's like a $4 card, so that's like $12 you're shaving off if you just don't play it. And do keep in mind that this is without the side decks, so like Glads aren't playing Dimensional Fissure, or like I didn't include Dimensional Fissure in this price evaluation, but if you're playing Glads, you probably should have Dimensional Fissure on your side. I think it makes sense. A lot of these builds did, and I think that card's more expensive right now. I'm trying to think if there's any other cards that are important to mention. I think Thunder King is a bit expensive, so if Thunder King gets reprinted, I make Fairies a bit cheaper. Speaking of actually cards I want reprinted, there's one that isn't on here at all because I didn't include side decks, but Pulling the Rug is like a $5 card, and I really want that one to get reprinted. I think the next GX, or the next Speed Duel set, if they reprint Pulling the Rug, it'll make a lot of side decks a lot cheaper, which is nice. So yeah, there's a couple cards like that. Ancient Fairy got errata recently in current, or in the OCG. So when that comes over to the TCG, it's probably going to be unbanned. I think it's banned still in the TCG. So that means Ancient Fairy will get cheaper, etc., etc. I keep track of all this stuff just because I like collecting the cards in paper. So when a new card gets a cheaper reprinting, I'm always excited. But anyways, I think that's mostly it, actually. Just to go back on the Armor Master, you can see that for this Blackwing list, the extra deck is actually $38 and the main deck is $36. So like those Armor Masters really do make a huge difference. Also, Blackwing being like a semi-viable rogue deck in the current meta, once they become like kind of power crept out and eclipsed by other like legacy support, or I think that's what they call it, other old fan favorite decks that get like new support, Blackwings will kind of fall out of that role, and I think Blackwings in general will become a lot cheaper. Yeah, so that's pretty much it. Just answering a quick question that I know a lot of people who are interested in Edison might have. Feel free to direct your friends to this video if they have that question. Give us a like and a subscribe on the channel, It really helps us out. Put a comment down if there's any cards you want reprinted. Thanks for all the support. I'll be back with another video sometime soon, and adios.